So I'm here again with Stephen Mojzsis at the European Geosciences Union Conference in Vienna. We're at the conference venue, and Stephen just gave a very well attended talk, uh, an abstract of which he was trying to explain to me, and hopefully he's going to elucidate that. But Stephen is currently living in Budapest, not for very much longer here, but you are with the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, a geologist, a very well-known geologist. And Stephen, can you tell us the gist of your abstract that you just gave?
Essentially, what we're looking at is a broad picture of the evolution of microbial life. So the first life forms were these unicellular things, single-celled things, that had a relatively simple metabolism, a way to gain energy from the environment in order to make themselves, to make organic matter. Evidence points to the nature of this metabolism being based on hydrogen. So in a sense, it's the first hydrogen economy. Hydrogen, formed from chemical reactions near volcanic centers on the seafloor, was being used by these first organisms to reduce bicarbonate in seawater to make themselves, to make organic matter.
And how long ago was this?
So it is thought that life completed its emergence about 4 billion years ago. But there's a point at which life has to leave this cradle and this prison where an abundant source of hydrogen is available. And these places, these volcanic centers on the seafloor, are obviously restrictive. Life needed to diversify in order to expand into new ecological niches. But how did it do that? And the clue comes from sulfur. The element sulfur is spectacular for life because it has many different oxidation states. And what life does when it metabolizes things, when it eats things, it does a reduction oxidation reaction, right? So you eat a hamburger, you breathe oxygen, you oxidize the hamburger, it releases energy into your body, which powers your body's function. Microbes do the same thing. They use hydrogen to reduce the carbon dioxide to make organic matter to build themselves. At the same time life was emerging, raining from the sky was free food in the form of this sulfur. But according to our analysis, early life wasn't using any of this sulfur. None of this free food raining down could be used by life. And why? And the answer is that the energy provided by a simple hydrogen economy around these volcanic centers is not enough. There isn't enough excess in order to make use of all of this free food. So that compelled my team and I to look into the geologic record to see, okay, can we see when sulfur started to be eaten?
And where exactly did you look into the geological record?
So we started with the earliest geologic record. The earliest sediments show no metabolism of sulfur. And so we went closer and closer to us in time, still in the first billion years or so of geology, until we see an abrupt change in the sulfur chemistry. That abrupt change seems to occur at about the same time that you see an abrupt change in the delivery of nutrients to the oceans, in an abrupt change in the volume of continental crust that was being produced, in abrupt changes to the geosphere that impact the biosphere. And that's what this whole session at this conference is about, the intersection of those two spheres in what we call biogeodynamics. Photosynthesis, once that originated, provided organic matter to allow microbes to diversify their metabolic styles and to start consuming sulfur that was raining from the skies since the beginning of habitats in our planet.
And so the photosynthesis is still thought to have begun with the cyanobacteria.
This is photosynthesis that's not oxygen. This is photosynthesis that uses light energy to make metabolic energy, but oxygen's not a product. The oxygenic photosynthesis came much later.
So this is anaerobic photosynthesis.
Precisely. This is the kind of photosynthesis that is ancestral to green plants. This photosynthesis isn't green. It's red and purple.
And so this is actually what NASA is hoping to find on extrasolar planets, the red photosynthesis, correct?
This is one of these ideas. It's called the search for the red edge.
Right. And so why the change from anaerobic photosynthesis, if it were efficient, was aerobic photosynthesis more efficient with the cyanobacteria than anaerobic photosynthesis?
This is an interesting question, because obviously photosynthesis was around before cyanobacteria, before oxygenic photosynthesis, before green plants. But then oxygenic photosynthesis emerged. It evolved.
Right.
Oxygen is a poison. It's an environmental poison. So the oxygenic photosynthesizers poisoned everybody else. And that was a very effective means of out-competing everybody else, because...
And I just got the last of your talk, and I think you said within 18 months of its arrival, it would have spread around the planet.
If there were no barriers, if you have an evolutionary innovation in the ocean, just taking into account doubling time of cells and ocean currents, you could populate the oceans with an evolutionarily innovative new organism in 18 months. However, it takes much longer than that, right? Because in reality, you have barriers. You have barriers like salinity, barriers such as the oxygen itself is poisonous to cyanobacteria. So they had to evolve means to prevent them from being destroyed by their own waste. So while it is true that oxygenic photosynthesis appeared, it didn't take over all at once. And I think we see this in the geologic record. But then, now back to my point. The first life was not photosynthetic. The first life was chemosynthetic. It used natural chemicals emanating from the Earth's crust. That life, some branch of that life, began to make use of light. And it invented anoxic, anaerobic photosynthesis. And that could spread throughout the oceans unimpeded. There was free space everywhere until oxygenic photosynthesis came along and demolished the entire trophic style and reestablished what we now have as an aerobic world.
So have geologists or the biogeophysicists underestimated the dynamics between the natural underpinning of Earth itself and the biosphere?
Yes, because up until very recently, the two fields of science didn't communicate with one another. Now, we're of course beginning to understand that as much as the geology of the Earth influences the biology that is draped on the Earth, the biology, we're beginning to understand now, has some influence on the geology. And that was a topic
and vice versa, though. I mean, it goes
of many talks at this session.
It goes both ways.
We're now understanding it goes both ways.
So what's the takeaway from this paper?
That a living world is one where the intersection of the geosphere and the biosphere is dynamic, and it sustains that living world over geologic timescales.
So thank you so much, Stephen, for your time. Good luck. I think you have a paper coming out, and we'll talk about that a bit
Looking
later.
forward to it.
Thank you.